We go to another one that doesn't unmute. So, all right.
Well, Joan, nice to see you. Thank you so much for doing this.
You're very welcome. Sorry
Oh,
it took so long.
don't worry about it. It's a treat for me. I can't believe we're doing it. So I would like to introduce my guest is Joan Baez. She is a famous folk singer, activist, member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and an author of a new book that I ran out and bought this morning at Copperfield's called "When You See My Mother, Ask Her to Dance." It's really a great book, Joan. And thanks for talking with us. I want to ask you something. Going back to 1975, I've been in the record business, working in record stores as well as radio for going on 50 years. And in 1975, uh, I was a big fan of your album Diamonds and Rust. There's a line in the song Diamonds and Rust. As I remember, your eyes were bluer than robin's eggs. My poetry was lousy, you said.
Yeah, ha ha
Did
ha.
someone really say that?
He
Did he?
did. He did.
Uh, well, it would be kind of funny to have it like it's one of the you know quotes in here. Uh, so I can't believe that he said that. But anyway, let's move on to the book. The one thing that you did say that I think is lovely. Poetry is like love. It can't be forced. All we can do is await its birth and celebrate its arrival.
Mhm.
That is really sweet. And from what I understand, most of the poems that in the book were written or started to be written in the 1990s from 1991 to 97. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
Were they in your shed?
And in my shed?
Yeah,
Which shed?
they're in the movie.
Oh, there's this terrible rickety, looks like an old chicken coop.
Yeah, where you open up the door and there's all these old tapes and stuff. Is that
Oh,
where
that. No, no, no.
your
Yeah,
storage shed?
that's storage unit. That's why I couldn't get what you were saying.
Okay.
So what's the question again? We got past that.
Is that where the poems were all these years? Were
Oh,
they in your storage unit?
some of them were, and I got the woman you saw on screen about 2 seconds ago as my assistant, and I cut her loose trying to find these poems. She looked everywhere. Some of them were, in fact, in that storage unit, and others were in drawers and, under beds, whatever. They were just everywhere. So it took
Mm-hmm.
a long time collecting them, a long time. And then the process of editing, which I really loved. I really enjoyed that. That went on for 8 months, maybe more.
Oh, well, that's fun. Yeah. Now, were they handwritten poems or did you have them typed or saved on a computer?
Some of them were on a computer. Again, Nancy found an ancient computer to look for some of the ones that I knew existed, and she couldn't print them. She had to type them from what was on. She had to retype them, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So they came from everywhere, and some of them were handwritten, and some of them were fading. Some of them were already typed out. And it was a process of some of them being, that I could edit from the computer, and others I had to sort of start from go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, in 1991, when you started, you had this period from 1991 to 1997. Was this kind of like a task that you were given, or that you gave yourself, or how did you start writing these poems?
No, it's sort of like the music. It just started coming out, and it was a time period when I was doing very deep work in therapy. And when I sort of started hitting what I was looking for, and it was really quite deep, and it had to do with childhood abuse. I started dissociating. And when I dissociated, that would literally, these little other entities will make themselves present, and they become very real. And a couple of them are given credit in the book because they basically did a lot of the writing, which simply means that, sometimes I would look down at the page and think, oh my goodness, where did that come from? And in fact, it came from somewhere in here. And for me, it's somebody in here. But people who don't like that kind of stuff can say, oh, it's just you or whatever. I mean, yes, it was my Joan's hand that was writing this stuff, but it was
Mm-hmm.
coming from somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, I like how the some of the poems are formatted too, like the indentation and the spacing and everything. That's did you have help with that or was that you're doing?
No, that was oh, a couple times my editor gave me a hint with that. Mainly it's so it hasn't really got much sense to it. But or and sometimes I like the way it looked on the page, so I just start making indentations. Um, so in other words, like everything I've ever done, it was pretty much unschooled.
Hmm.
A lot of hints from my editor, and but he really did not impose a whole lot on me. Or if he tried and I didn't like it, then he'd give up.
Yeah, there you go. Now, what is your personal history with poetry as far as being a fan of poetry? Do you have a lot of poetry books? Do you read a lot of poetry?
No, I don't. I'm absolutely terrible. I don't read much of anything, and I never have. So I'm pretty sort of it's where there should be lots and lots of other people's poems. It's kind of an empty hole. And I guess I try to fill it with my own.
Hmm.
So, but I would say that about any reading. I think I've had trouble reading. And now, grace to whatever, there's podcasts. So, and there's Audible. On Audible, I can find just about anything
Hmm.
that I'm looking for, or in the books on somehow the books on the computer are easier for me.
Now, with the trouble reading, does that is that connected at all with your drawing upside down?
That's a good question. Probably it's connected to the goofier side of me, um, and the side that the trouble reading. I think when you say that, I'm thinking of how I amused myself through high school. And that's, I'm sure, where some of this stuff came from. I would write backwards. I taught myself to write backwards and then to say it backwards. And I mean, you can see how interested I was in geometry. I just flew out the window and did my own thing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, do you have is your book handy where you can read a poem from it?
Let me grab one. I'll be right there.
Okay, we're talking with Joan Baez, everybody. I can't believe that I'm talking with Joan Baez, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and she has agreed to speak to me on KRCB. This is Midday Music with your old buddy Doug Jayne, and Joan's book is called "When You See My Mother, Ask Her to Dance," and seems like it'd be a perfect Mother's Day gift with Mother's Day coming right up. I'm just throwing that out there to the
You
to my
keep going.
listeners.
Keep throwing it out. That's
We will.
what would
You,
you like me to read?
I would like you to read on page 37, My Beautiful Young Mom.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. My beautiful young mom. My beautiful young mom in her homemade flower print dress with puffed sleeves, a white collar, and a waistband that ends in a pretty bow at the back, puts on an apron and cleans the boarding house top to toe. She cooks meals for 10 people, buys fish from the fish truck on Thursdays, keeps the budget in an accordion-shaped folder. So much for household utilities, so much for groceries, so much for gas, and not so much for new stockings. She tends to us all our small wants. When she finally sits down for a cigarette break, she dreams of a lighter load. She makes smoke rings for us, and we poke our fingers through them, then beg her to make tiny spit bubbles under her tongue and blow them into the air. She obliges. For the moment, the struggle stops or is tamped down. She puts on a record of Björling. His silvery, tearful voice fills her soul, and the screeching gulls cease to feast upon her beautiful young heart. Perhaps this glorious moment can last forever.
That is beautiful.
Thank you.
And Bjorling is Yossi, and he is the has to do with the title of the book. Uh,
Yes,
and you grew up hearing a lot of opera, is that right?
yes, I did. And the UC Björling is tenor, And at the end of my life now, he's still my favorite tenor. There was some tears in his voice. Mom used to say there were tears in his voice. Then it turns out the writings about him describe him that way. He had tears in his voice. And so mom would just stop her house cleaning and lean on the end of a broom and just go into this kind of a swoon, listening to Burling. And then I did too. I mean, I was very young at that point, but it was beautiful to me. And he remained my favorite opera singer, past all the more, he's not the loudest and he's a terrible actor. He just has this exquisite voice. And the story is a made up story, which I didn't plan. And it was as though I'd write a certain amount and then it would unfold itself in front of me, because it's a fantasy about my mother meeting Burling and them at a dance.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Now, did listening and being exposed to opera influence your singing? Because you have a very, particularly when your very early albums, very operatic voice.
Yeah, I used to put on Joan Sutherland, famous, magnificent soprano,
Hmm.
and I would harmonize with her on these impossible songs, which now, of course, I could only dream of. But I loved it, and I would imitate it. But when somebody suggested I study opera, I felt that I was belonged more um, on the ground more, and then it appeared in my life was folk music, and it was sort of an aha. That's really where I belong.
Hmm. Now, the book is dedicated to Jasmine and to the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jasmine's your granddaughter,
Yes.
and you mind talking a little bit about her?
Not at all. She's an extraordinary girl, of course, and she surprises us all because I was not academic. My son, her father, was not academic. And here she is, songwriting, singing, appearing on stage. And the last thing she said was, I want to go to law school. She's always done anything she said she was going to do. So, okay, she'll go. She wants to study entertainment law and, partly just protect herself and her career. Um, yeah, I mean, I look in awe at this kid because the things academically that she does that I would never, ever, ever have dreamed
Yeah.
of. Yeah.
And were you close, physically close? I mean, living close as while she was a kid growing up?
Close enough. Hour and a half away, and then sometimes here at the house. And she comes here, of course, on holidays. And being 20, and she took off to England when she got out of school. And I realized, okay, she's not going to be flying home. She's going to be going somewhere else and
Oh,
and dropping in here occasionally.
yeah. Now, what does she think about Grandma's career? Do you ever talk about it with her, or she?
She's just lovely about it. I mean, of course, she's getting this stuff when she has an interview and they all start talking about me. And she'll just say, yeah, my grandmother was a huge force in my life. She taught me this, she taught me, and she deflects it in that way, which is really intelligent and really kind.
Yeah. We just had our grandkids were up. They live in Denver, and they
Mm-hmm.
were here visiting around the holidays, and they're at they're at a point where they're still little kids, but they're kind of on the cusp of being adults. And
Yeah.
they actually came to the radio station and sat the whole time while I did my show. I thought there's no way they're going to want to sit here with Grandpa while he, you know, does his radio show, but they were so sweet, and I treasure that moment.
And what shocks us is that they were actually interested.
I know. Yeah, it was really great.
Yeah.
Now the other question is about the future. And I mean, you were there on the steps with Martin Luther King singing "We Shall Overcome." I mean, what does the future look like now, Joan Baez?
Oh, it looks absolutely terrible. And we have to deal with that in our own lives in different ways. Um, I'm very grim about it. I don't talk about it in grim terms around Jasmine because she's so full of life and
Yeah.
wanting to have a career as a singer and a lawyer. So I'm not going to sit there and talk about what I think the future is going to be. She knows what I think, but I think it's important not to keep bringing it up because I think that the key to our lives now is to be in denial most of the time, so we can appreciate the beauty around us, and not have to think about the darkness. And so if we're doing that 90% of the time and living our lives kind of innocently, then the other 10%, we have to really find something we can do that has meaning, hopefully meaning for somebody else. There's so much tragedy and heartache, hunger, and all of it in the world that one has to find a niche in that. And even if it's not going to save the world, it's going to mean one more pure thread in the fabric of this country. And this country's, needs that.
Yeah. Uh, I was friends with the late Elbert Big Man Howard. He was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party.
Mhm.
And he told me that we really just need to start with ourselves and then with our friends and with our neighbors, and don't don't try and do too much.
Yeah, way back when I didn't agree with that because I felt that we couldn't reach that point with ourselves, that we couldn't reach that much peace. That we had, if we took care of ourselves first, we wouldn't have any time left over for anybody else. So I believed back then that we had to do it all at once. You
Hmm.
try to, and now I'm not sure how I feel about that because I think there's not that much time left, and it's more about figuring out how you're going to use that time, um, creatively and beautifully, and what in nature you see that makes you want to keep going. Um, those are our chores.
Yeah. What do you think about the protests on the college campuses?
I think they're absolutely wonderful. I mean, it is a throwback, and I think, oh shoot, I wish I was there. you know,
And what keeps you from going?
I think you have to be invited, particularly with kids. In the old days, I would get myself invited,
Yeah.
with the peace women in Ireland. I called them and I said, you have to invite me if you want me there. And they did. And I'm just very respectful of the protests now. If somebody reached out and said, boy, we could really use a boost, then of course I would go.
Yeah. You know, we all have these images of Martin Luther King giving a speech on the steps and you up there with him. And it's the black and white images that we've seen for years and years. Can you talk a little bit about what it looked from where you were standing, and how the crowds looked, and what it was like to be there?
Yeah, I have this picture, I think it's in the film, of a friend of mine and myself, way, way, way up in the building looking at the crowd, you could see the whole thing.
Mhm.
And so I can't really relive the emotions that went through then because I don't think I'd ever had them before. I'd never seen that many people before. I'd never seen a movement of people who all wanted the same thing and were willing to walk for it, probably fight for it. A lot of them willing to put themselves at risk and make sacrifices. And I know I was aware of that at the time. And then and then came the speech, which I just devolved, it just turned into a puddle of tears because it was so stunning. He was so stunning and heartful. And he was a great orator, really great. And that day he was speaking to millions of people.
Yeah, and we're still listening to it and still talking about him.
Yeah,
Did you have private moments with Dr. King?
I did. Yeah. And what people don't know and what I got a chance to experience was his sense of humor. I
Yeah.
mean, he had to. He joked about everything because he couldn't do it in public because
No.
anything he did was watched with spy glasses. So anything as an excuse to downgrade him he couldn't do, but in private, he was very funny.
Yeah. Can I ask you a couple of questions not related to the book, just off the wall questions?
Yeah.
Do you is it true that you sleep in a tree?
I do less than I used to, but yeah, there's a platform up there about 22 feet up. And I like it. It has no roof on it. I just like to be there. It gives me the impression I'm closer to the stars, you know. Yeah, it's really very beautiful. Most recently, I I changed where a pond was on the property, and where it is now, I thought, oh, maybe I'll get a frog. Well, about 48 hours later, there was this frog, and it stopped singing one night. And I thought, oh my God, what's happened? And I would look back, and I think he was on a date because the next day there were two of them.
Aha.
They're really loud. And I'm thinking, oh, but the guest room is right next door. I'm going to have to put earplugs in the guest room.
Well, with that said, I'd like to ask you to read another poem if you don't mind.
Should I
And
love
this one is on page 135 called Tremors.
to. Okay, 130. Tremors. I lost my balance trying to get across the creek, my sneakers slipping on the moss as I poked around for a patch of gravel or sand to steady myself. I fell over backwards, laughing and grasping at rocks as my body drifted rapidly and uncontrollably downstream. Back on dry land, somewhat sobered, I pondered. Maybe I have terminal vertigo. Maybe I have a tumor on my brain. Maybe I won't live long. Maybe I'll get tremors. Maybe I just have to adjust my medication.
That is awesome.
Thank you.
Well, it is funny is, I turned 70 this year, and a lot of my friends are my age, and falling is a big concern. And that's
It's
what
a,
made me think about the tree too. It's like it must worry your family and your friends to,
I
Joan,
fell
be
out.
careful up there.
I fell out. I fell off the ladder about 15 years, 12 years ago,
Oh, oh.
and cracked up my pelvis. So now I don't go up or down without a climbing halter. So I have to hitch myself up and climb up, and then I can take it off, and then the reverse.
Now in 2019, you finished up your Fairly Well tour, uh, saying goodbye to the fans and your career as a performing artist. Uh, any regrets, thoughts about that?
No regrets at all. At all. It was planned right. And it was, I think it says in the film, it was the right time. 3 years before wasn't the right time. I didn't want to wait any longer. And it was carefully planned by my manager and myself. So that, no, I have no regrets at all.
Good. We were at the we were at the Fairly Well tour at the Fox Theater, and
Oh,
and
nice.
we were at the Nasty Woman T-shirt show the day before
Yeah,
the worst day in the world. I
it
mean,
was.
we were ready to high five and have our first
Yeah.
woman president, and God damn, what happened?
Well spoken. I don't know.
And why is it still happening? I don't get how people think that this guy is,
Well, they
he
don't
stands
think.
for anything.
He doesn't stand for anything. So nobody has an answer to that question. There are a lot of theories about it. And I don't know what's missing in people's lives that they want to put that in it. So I honestly, I can't figure out any better than the next guy.
Yeah. The idea that Democrats are as bad as Russians, it just kills me. I mean, no, I don't know. There seems to be more animosity toward fellow Americans now than there was when we were protesting Vietnam War.
Not only that, but taking a pass, giving Putin a free pass, not just that, but buddies. He just appreciates, sort of admires, or it's more than that, dictators. Just tickle his fancy,
Yeah.
They'd like to be that, like to do that. I
Yeah.
mean, saying that life would be so much easier if I were a dictator.
Mm. Well, enough about that guy. Let me ask you about your painting. I've seen some of your painting, and it's this series. What is the series called?
Mischief makers.
Mischief Makers. They're just beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Wh-
you.
uh, How did you learn how to paint? Are you self-taught or do you take lessons?
No, I'm self-taught, but what I do is I get hints. I'll go to somebody who really knows what they're doing. For instance, when I painted Fauci, I realized I have to put those glasses on him, and I had no idea how to do that. So I went toddling off to one of these artist friends, and I said, "How do I do this?" And they show me literally a couple of tricks, and it was done like that. I thought, "Oh my God, I would have labored for days to try and get that just right." And same thing with let's see, uh, the necklace. I can't remember who it's on, but this complicated necklace. And I went to the same guy. I said, "How do I paint this necklace?" And he took his, he stuck the brush in different little colors and kind of splattered them all over the page. And it came out looking like a necklace. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go home and do that. Uh,
Wow.
so yeah,
Who knew? That's great.
yeah,
Uh, we saw you at the tribute to Ramblin' Jack a couple
yeah.
months ago. That was sure fun.
It was fun. And those things are the only thing that I miss about being trained, but keeping my voice going
Hmm.
is that I would like to be able to do that, get up and do that absolutely spontaneously. And I have to get the guitar out and work on it and have the song figured out in the right key for me, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't do that much of it. But Jack was certainly a worthy, a worthy soul to do it.
Yeah, that was a really fun show. So, do you pick up your guitar and sing and practice?
No, only if I'm going to do a concert like that, a couple of songs.
Yeah.
But that's part of the struggle. I have to get the guitar down. It's literally when somebody says I hung the guitar up, there are two of them hanging beautifully on the wall. It means I have to take one down and get my spaghetti fingers back into muscle memory before I can do any couple songs in public.
Yeah. I play the guitar and I hadn't, I was like you, when I get asked to play, I would need so much practice and I
Yeah.
was struggling with it. And I had a friend that just said, pick up your guitar every day, whether you just hold it. If you're watching TV or something, just hold it in your hands and I'm trying to do that. And it's really helpful.
Oh, well, good. That's a good idea. I'm not sure I'm going to bother.
Well, and another thing I want to mention is I watched just kind of preparing to talk to you. I watched the induction speech that Jackson Browne gave you into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That was very sweet.
He has been absolutely loved me in my life. He's never said no to anything. Plus his music. I mean, I'll still put on Jackson Browne Essentials and let it go all night long. He's just beautiful. That voice is beautiful, and his writing was back in the day brilliant.
Yeah, he just nailed it
Yeah.
so often and so great. And it's not to mean that he's not equally great now. It's just when you put out records of that higher quality
Yeah.
as a 21-year-old kid and into his early 30s. I mean,
How do you keep going? Yeah.
hard to top.
Yeah.
Really, really, really great. Uh, Joan, is there anything that you would like to tell our listeners here in Sonoma County? The thing that I've mentioned to people that I'm going to be talking to you, and a lot of people are saying, I hope that Joan is okay.
Oh.
They really care about you.
Oh, that's really lovely. Tell them I am more than okay.
Uh,
I never thought it could happen, but yeah, I am more than okay. And bless their hearts and keep listening to this radio station.
yeah. Joan Baez, what a treat talking to you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank you so much. And everybody, the book is When You See My Mother, Ask Her to Dance. It would be a perfect Mother's Day present, which is just coming up Sunday.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're
Great
welcome.
talking to you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Thanks.